Real simple. It's not live or anything. All right, let me get started here. Hey guys, welcome to Castle's Corner. I'm Coach Castle, joined today by a special guest. Some of you saw me pop over on his podcast, but he's coming here today. Today's podcast is all about advice for young men. All the things I wish I had known and I had learned earlier. Well, we're going to be sharing them today. We're going to get into relationships. We're going to get into women. We're going to talk about goal setting and everything else. But anyways, let's welcome our guest. Hey, Brian, how are you?
I am well. How are you, Coach?
I'm good. Just go ahead and introduce yourself. Some people already know who you are, anyways.
Oh, no, I don't think that many do, but I appreciate that. So, my name is Brian Martinez. I am a producer over at a channel called Honey Badger Radio and another channel called Badger Live Streams. We are known, I guess, in the sort of manosphere space as the Honey Badgers. The Honey Badgers was originally started by a group of women that cared about men's issues. And I was an early fan around 2013 or so. I did some art for them because I'm also an illustrator and I do painting and stuff. And I had a story to tell about an experience I had in college with the way that I was being treated by the staff there. And then after that, they wanted me to come back on. They liked the sound of my voice, so I became a producer, and now I basically run all the shows just about. Um, Honey Badger Radio specifically discusses men's issues, or at least we did from the perspective of the legal, and then and we've now that we've basically gone through all of those issues, things like divorce court, child custody, paternity fraud, circumcision, because we think that's wrong and it's basically child abuse, um, and other issues. When we figured that even though we've been talking about this stuff, it wasn't picking up a lot of momentum. And one of the things that we realized was an obstacle is that there is like almost no care or compassion for men as a group, right?
Zero, pretty
And
much.
so, yeah, what were we gonna say?
I said like zero, pretty much. It's basically
Yeah,
here, go
like
fend for
basically,
yourself and solve all the world's
yeah,
problems.
yeah. It's basically zero. It's like trying to convince people that the world that they live in, the comforts that we enjoy, are only a product of man's labor, like the effort that men put in every day. It's like trying to convince a fish that they're actually swimming in water. Like that, you know what I'm saying? So I thought that I would make it a point to try to build a kind of understanding and compassion for men. At least it doesn't have to be empathy because men don't really want that, but what they want is respect and acknowledgement.
Understanding too would be
Yeah, they
nice.
want people to understand, like, don't take what you have for granted. We're living in the most um, abundant, comfortable, and safe society in all of human history because of men's sacrifice and effort, right? So we're that's what we're basically doing now. We're trying to get people to see that, and I think it's actually starting to have an effect. We also talk a little bit about relationships. I think that another byproduct of this situation we find ourselves in, where there is so much disregard for men's issues and even like shaming of men for who they are, in the education system, in the legal system, in corporate America, everywhere. It's it's something that we're trying to like what we call close the gap on, because we have it for women by default. If you hear like about here's a good example, and I don't want to like run this down too long, but if you remember, there was a campaign when Obama was president. It was called "Bring Back Our Girls." Do you remember "Bring Back Our Girls"? And it was in Africa. I can't remember the country, and I apologize. But in Africa, there was this news that there were these girls that had been taken by Boko Haram, which are like this terrorist organization, and there was this big social campaign called Bring Back Our Girls because they were kidnapped or something. And everybody was talking about it and it was all over the news. But what people don't know is that when Boko Haram came to these places to get these, to supposedly get these girls, there were also boys there because essentially these were boys and girls trying to get an education, right? And I think it was a Western education, but don't quote me on that. And Boko Haram didn't think they should be getting one, right? So they took the girls away, but they killed all the boys. They burned them alive. And no one talked about that. No one knew about that. And that's just one example. This is everywhere. Like if you look at
I would
any
say that the average person could probably think 20 off the top of their head. I mean, we don't even have to give examples on this subject. There's so
yeah,
many. I mean, I'm not even political in the least bit. It doesn't even need to be political. It can just be everyday things.
yes,
It is what it is. Guys, I deal with this a lot. I know most guys, they're under the impression, even nowadays, that they should just kind of man up. And I'm a firm believer in manning up, but not in the traditional sense of the word. What I
yeah,
mean when I say man up is more like become more stoic, in a way, to simplify things. Basically, become more stoic. Some of you know what stoicism is. I mean, maybe most of you have heard the term, but basically, things are what they are. Basically, kind of do the best with what you got. And if it's outside of your control, it's outside of your control. The only thing you can do is basically control how you react to it,
yes,
essentially.
absolutely. I'm not against, for a while, some people in the spaces I work with, they didn't like the man up thing, but I'm not against it. I think that if anything, not only do we want men to be more stoic, and that's what they want too. They want the strength to endure, like you said, the suffering that's outside of our control, because a lot of stuff happens that we can't really control. So how do we cope? And men need to learn how to do that. And I think stoicism is very useful for that. But I also think that instead of like, say, not telling men to man up, which I know is something that like feminists they kind of promote. They want men to be emotional,
If
like
they
women.
don't
I
even
think
want
that
that. I mean, sorry to interrupt, but they don't even want men to be emotional. It seems to me the issue mainly stems from semantics. No
yeah,
woman, and I'm serious, no woman, I know there's no women here, I apologize, but no woman psychologically wants a weak man who's just going to talk about his emotions. She's going to
no,
throw him out or friend zone him.
it makes them unattractive to women. It
It's
really
attractive to
does.
everyone. Nobody
Yeah,
likes.
and what I
I don't
think
even
would be
like women who
better.
talk about their fucking emotions. I don't care.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say what I think would be better is if women also got some stoicism. I mean, we can't expect them to be on par with men, but like, I think that if everyone was, see, the thing is, this is what I think is really going on, and I am going to have to get a little political because unfortunately, in order for me to do my job, we have to change the story, the narrative, the ideas that people have internalized as normal about our society.
Mhm.
And the feminist perspective that women are victims and men are perpetrators is the normal. Like, so if you go on, like, I've seen debates, right, with conservative commentators, and they'll debate feminists, and they'll say, "Oh, look, this data shows that a very small percentage of people identify as feminists, so you're losing." But that's not true. The
No.
truth is that what if you ask them instead of like, "Do you identify with this label?" which people would generally reject labels anyway, right? Because they don't want to be put in a box. But if you instead say, okay, what do you think about this thing as a value? Like, do you believe that men are dangerous? Do you believe that men would oppress women if they were given the chance? If they say yes, and most women will,
Mhm.
then there's no point in like saying, oh, you're not attached to this label, therefore you're not this thing. No, no, it comes down to a person's values and actions.
No,
So
the best way to sorry to interrupt, the best way to explain that is on top of that is it's also cultural and
yeah,
setting. Just like if you were in a schoolroom, to make an off comparison, most people understand. If you're in a classroom and the teacher asks the question, "Is it right to kill someone?" The
yeah,
entire classroom is going to say, "No, no, no, you shouldn't have," unless you're me, in which case I'll say yes if they deserve it. And then they're going to say,
yeah.
"Well, what does that mean?" "Well, they killed my dog, or they killed my child, or they're going around raping people,
They're breaking
etc."
into my house, or
But the
whatever.
common mentality is not what they have in their head. They're going to say whatever is socially acceptable to everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. So because we have to change that, I think that what I'm getting at is what I think feminism is doing, and not just feminism, but like leftism more broadly, but feminism is where it all comes from, is it's trying to create a class of people that are dependent on the state. So if they're constantly afraid, if they're constantly insecure, if they're constantly thinking like, that they can't do it on their own, if there's no um if there's no support system of some kind, then they're gonna like demand one, and these people will provide it. So it's ultimately it's about tyranny, it's about statism, and women are just the most useful tool to get that because of women's nature, which is tending towards valuing security. Now, in the past, they used to get that security from a man, but because men, like if you married a woman and you let's say it was in the years where most people lived on homesteads, and a man built his own home and he had a farm and he had some land and all that, the woman would get everything from him. But when after the industrial revolution and stuff, and we have like urbanization in cities, then Lyndon B. Johnson, in the United States at least, although there's parallels to other Western countries as well, was like, okay, we're going to create the Great Society. And what it is we're going to have the government pay for women, essentially, so they don't need men. But the catch is there can't be a man in the home, otherwise you won't get the benefits. And that's essentially the welfare state. And it's unsustainable. It's destroying society. And it is the cause of, it is not the cause, but it is the consequence of what we have done when we separated men from women, and we've created a society of terrified women and of evil men. At least according to their structure.
Now, I'd like to just say two things. So one, we're kind of, it's kind of good. We're kind of starting with the conclusion here, but let's take it back to the first principle basis after this little bit. Just what I would say is, kind of back to what I said about the classroom example, is I don't think, I mean, I could be wrong. I have a small sample size of people I've met and whatever, and some data I've seen, but I don't think the average person really believes any of this narrative if they think about it for half a second. I really believe, whether they're man or they're woman or whatever, unless there's some form of extremist who is like really dedicated to this cause, I don't think people typically think like this. I think they generally think men and women are different. They have different roles. They should have different roles, et cetera, et cetera. Most people kind of have this, I hate to use the word common sense, but it's kind of like that. And it's really only in the more social settings where people will voice these opinions. But that being said, it is unfortunately the world that we do currently find ourselves in. We all deal with it in a variety of ways. I apologize. You probably know this term already. I just found this term out. I am apparently a Sigma male. Do you know what that is?
It's just internet lingo. A Sigma male is basically a guy that's doing his own thing. Like that's not concerned with operating within the hierarchy. I don't know that it's accurate. I think it's just like an internet thing.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, because apparently I think it's just feeding people's egos. But it's like the Sigma male, the rarest of all males, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm looking at it and I'm reading all the crap that they're saying about the Sigma. And my thought process is just, this is a male. I'm not being a dick. I'm like, this is what a guy is. How is this 1% of the population? This is what a guy does.
No, I don't think. I think you're right. I don't think it is, because the thing is that there is a lot in the dating podcasts that are really popular, and the relationship podcasts, like whatever. Yeah, I know, but it's sort of like it's in the same circles as us, but we don't subscribe to a lot of the stuff that they say, like the PUAs, the red pill guys. I consider myself a red pill guy, but I'm not like using the same language. They will do this thing, and I don't think it's normal for men to do this. I think that a lot of us have been conditioned and socialized over generations to think this way. I don't think it's the natural state of man. I think the natural state is more like what people call the Sigma, sort of like thought process, where you're not concerned with how, you're not looking at what the other guy has and seeing what you rate next to him, right? You're just thinking about like, well, how do I create the best version of myself, right?
Yeah, I could have this wrong again. I just kind of looked into it for a second. It was a funny thing somebody sent me, but it just seems like a Sigma male is somebody who is doing their best in life, which is what by the way, I want this for everyone, not just young men. I want young women, young men, everyone to be the strongest, most intelligent, best version of themselves. Use the word virtuous too if you want. I don't want a bunch of evil assholes. But the best version of themselves. Now, I suppose, so taking it back to the kind of the beginning here, A lot of the things I wish, actually, probably one of the major things I wish I knew when I was younger, and we talked about this in our podcast that we did together, was I was very agreeable when I was younger, like as a probably like preteen and even a little bit in the teenage years. Everything was for everybody else. It's like, let me help you with that. What can I do for you? This, that, and the other. And I know a lot of people have, the concept of the nice guy. The nice guy gets friend zoned. The nice guy does not get the promotion. The nice guy does not get blank, 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 blank. This is just different terminology. It's agreeableness and disagreeableness. But if you're a guy and you are nice and you are agreeable, it you're very unlikely to get anything you want. You're probably going to be very bitter. No one is going to respect you, and you're going to have a pretty difficult life. I mean, would that does that sound about right?
No, that's absolutely right. I learned because when I was in high school, I was trying really hard to be the nice guy because I thought, that's what everybody told you, right? I think that we've all been socialized to think that that's what you're supposed to be. But the truth is, um, being a nice guy is it's like wearing a mask. It's not really
Exactly.
who you are. And so what I learned in my young adult life was that there was a difference between being nice and being good. And
Yes.
so I want to be a good guy, but a good guy is someone who doesn't sugarcoat anything. They speak the truth no
Mhm.
matter like how much it hurts people's feelings. And I think that it's actually much more, no, I have found this for sure. It is much more attractive to women and to men. Like you make real friends when you're good because you're going to attract people who are also good. You're going to be able to see through phonies. You're going to be able to, you know what I'm saying? So it's going to make you more discerning, which is important. And this is going back to, I want to, if you don't mind me going back to the Sigma Alpha
Yeah, yeah,
Beta
yeah.
thing. This is relevant to that because in the sort of pickup artist space, all the guys that run podcasts, well, not all of them, but a lot of them will say that they're alpha males, and then they'll like sort of criticize men who are not as sexually successful as them or whatever it is that they're saying and call them beta males. And the thing is that I think that if this is what I believe, and I've said this many times, I don't care what you look like, I don't care what shape you're in, I don't care like how good your hairdresser is or whatever. If you have to tell me you're an alpha male, you're not. So you know what I'm saying? Like, no, you that should be the furthest thing from your mind to like actually, hey, by the way, dude, I'm an alpha male. Did you know that? Like, no, that's pathetic. Like, just I don't care about that stuff. Like in general, I first sort of logically looked at it. I was like, okay, so if this alpha beta thing is real, then if you took a bunch of alphas and put them all in a space together, wouldn't they still fall into a hierarchy and there'd be like an alpha above those guys and then the other guys would become betas? So this thing is totally contextual and that it's not the way men work. Like when the thing about men is, and feminists will lie about this, they've been lying about male nature forever because they don't really understand men. The truth about men is that we don't dominate each other. We complement each other. Now some
Yeah.
people are better than others. Like look at so I'm from Chicago. And in the 90s, we had the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, all of the greats. Like it was like an Olympic like level team. They were awesome. Three championships, right? I'm not even a big basketball fan, and when the playoffs would come, I would get super hyped up. I was working as a busboy at the time. The thing is that people will say, well, like they would observe it like it's a hierarchy. Oh, Michael Jordan's the best and Scottie
Mm,
Pippen's the second best. But the truth is, they all needed each other.
yep.
So as a team, they work together. Now, and the thing is, I know that sportsmanship ain't what it used to be because I think that it's been corrupted. I think that in many ways,
Horribly.
yeah, and I know because like
Horribly.
when I used to watch boxing matches, you would see guys. I mean, this still kind of happens, but yeah, they were there to knock each other out, but they had a lot of respect for each other. And this is the same thing with sports. There was this idea that if you got to play against the Bulls, you were honored, or the Lakers, or whatever the hot team was, right? Or same thing with any sport, right? And we have really moved really far away from that. If you think about it, because this is going back to what I was talking about with nice guys and good guys.
Mm,
See, I think that I could be wrong, but I think that Michael Jordan was generally a good guy. You know, like that, like
Absolutely.
he was a role model. You know,
This
like
is well back to what you said earlier. This is the mistake people make. I get this all the time. People misread me all the time. I am an extremely kind and good person. That doesn't fucking mean I'm nice. There's a big difference. Just by necessity, something for people to understand. You cannot be a good man unless you have the ability to defend yourself and your positions.
yeah,
Because otherwise, you will literally just bow the head, kowtow, say anything anybody else wants to fit in, to be with the crowd, to be in that location.
yep,
And this is something that no one should, I mean, I don't want to say it like this, there's a time and a place sometimes, but you should never be in a position where you're not willing to defend yourself, where you're not willing to say no, basically. If you can't tell somebody to go fuck off, you cannot negotiate with the person. You have no power and you have no respect. This is one thing if you want to ask your boss for a raise, for example, before you ask your boss for a raise, just because, whatever fucking reason you want to come up with, how is your job performance? Are you performing better than is expected of you? What's going to
hmm
happen if he says no? What are you going to do? Will you leave? Are you willing to quit? Do you have other job opportunities lined up? Because I'll tell you what, when you go into the interview, your boss is going to know right away from how you're carrying yourself, whether you have options, whether you've done the research, and whether or not you deserve that raise. It's the same
hmm
thing.
yep, yep. And I think that this is masculinity has been lost for a lot of people, even people in this kind of like supposedly pro male red pill space. And I'm not criticizing those guys. I get that everyone's grasping, you know, at something, especially men. They're looking to see what their identity is. That's why there's like such a following for people like Jordan B. Peterson. I don't know if you've heard of Jordan Peterson.
Big fan,
And
big fan. Well, not everything, but a big fan of some of the
yeah,
stuff.
but I mean, yeah. So I mean, I got to interview Peterson once, and
I
I
didn't
think
know that. I got to check that out. I didn't know you had
yeah,
him.
yeah, it was years ago when
Oh,
before
congratulations, though. That's
blew up.
cool.
Yeah, I got pretty lucky. We got to talk to. We have this Midas touch, so you might like look forward to blowing up yourself. Where there seems to be a tendency when we get a guest on our show, and then they go on to become really popular, like
Hmm.
Peterson, like Carl Benjamin, who started a show called The Lotus Eaters. It's pretty big. Like
That's familiar.
Blair White, who's like a famous trans sort of activist that fights against the LGBT
Oh,
agenda.
good, good, good.
LGBTQ. Yeah, she
That's,
is trans, but she doesn't like the the grooming and all that crap that's
well,
going
dude, the
on.
alphabet people are getting out of control. I mean, I don't know if you know this. I live in Wilton Manors, Florida. It's the gayest place in America. I'm a
Oh,
straight guy. I'm dead center in the middle of gay zone. If I walk down the
yeah.
street, I'm treated like a piece of meat. You know, when I
Oh,
walk down the, it is what it is. But I
yeah.
mean, you don't hear any of this here. You know, all the craziness that you hear from the alphabet people, I am surrounded by the gayest people in the world. I walk out and there's people in butterfly wings and dog masks on being walked by their husband. Okay. I'm in the gayest place in America, and these people don't talk about this stuff. They don't care. I don't know where these other alphabet people come from, but they don't care here.
Yeah, well, certainly not the normies on the street. Like, because I used, you know, when I lived in Chicago for a while, I lived about a block away from this area called Boys Town, which was a gay neighborhood. But it was like a very, well, gay men make a lot of money. So it
Oh
was a
yeah.
very high end like area, you know, really nice, no crime, nothing like that. In fact, when the pride parades come around, they hated it. They did, you know, the people who dislike the pride parades the most are the gays that live in the neighborhoods where it's happening. It's
You
funny.
would you wouldn't believe how many gay friends I have who routinely tell me, "Man, I fucking hate gay people." I'm like, "What? What does that mean?"
Yeah, I used to hear that too, although they didn't use the word gay people.
Oh yeah,
I
they,
won't
he says something else. He does say something.
yeah, 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 yeah. There's a difference between the two. It's like the Chris Rock joke.
But
But
anyways, let's real quick, let's take it back. Let's pretend that you're going to give work advice. So advice about work to a 18-year-old you. What are you going to say?
Advice about work.
About work. It could be work ethic, maybe. Could be work ethic. Could be
Well, I would definitely say that, like, you know, when you're 18, like, I was just really happy to have a job, even though I was exhausted like every day because I was getting pushed to my limit. But
what was the job?
I was a busboy. It was my first job. I was a
Oh.
busboy at a kind of like it was in the Gold Coast of Chicago, really high-end cafe called Sweet Bean, and it was run by models. There were beautiful women that worked there and managed it. So the theme was you would go, it was all not like Hooters, which is kind of trashy, but like you had these really attractive waitresses, bartenders, managers, and they hired me on as my first job. I was like 18 or something, you know, and it was hard. I would go home sweating, you know, bullets. I worked all summer. That was when the Bulls were winning championships. So when the game would come around, there'd be like giant parties. I met some celebrities like Woody Harrelson ate there, for example, and Paula Abdul when she was famous. so um so anyway, so yeah, I would say that, like, the thing that I wish I knew was that working a job like that, as hard as it is, it's an investment to get you thinking about this kind of like grind that is just going to be your life. Like there's, you know, like we're living in a time now where retirement is further and further away for people because of how bad the economy is, because of how much the government is screwing not just us, but like children not yet born. And so I think that it's very important for young guys to like get into the groove of working, even if the job is hard, even if it's a lot of work, it's totally worth it. And also start thinking about, like, you know, as you're doing what you do, I think it's really important to keep your eyes open for any like opportunities to start a business if you are of the kind of mindset. Like, for example, you might find that a job you're working at, there's something that they're doing that you think could be done better. If there was like some kind of a program or some kind of a device or a system or whatever, and then you can use that to like improve, right? Like, you know, if Sweet Bean Cafe ended up closing down in like 2 years, now if I was of the mind to like want to open up a restaurant, I could already think of like 10 things I would have done differently so that it wouldn't have closed, you know?
Just because of what you said, it made me think of this. So, I mean, just real quick, I know a lot of you watching this know this, but I mean, I had no money growing up. I mean, like the kind of no money where if I wanted to clothes, I had to break into somebody's locker and steal their clothes and rip it up so it looked like mine. That kind of shit. So for me, I was always about making money and I was always about working. And I'm talking, I mean, I was thinking about this shit when I was 5 or 6 years old. I was anything I could do. Now, the issue with this was I was agreeable. And on top of that, I had very low confidence. I was very shy. I was very timid, etc. So this made making money difficult. So what I did was I would just approach my neighbors and ask them literally what they needed help with, and I would do money. And then that graduated into me selling candy on the school bus. And then that graduated me getting a landscaping job and etc. So again, a lot of you guys know I'm kind of a ridiculous workaholic. I've been an outcast my entire life, so I've only ever focused on self-improvement and making money and getting better. That's a good thing about being a social outcast. There's lots of negatives. I wouldn't recommend it to people, anyone actually. But that being said, when it comes to young guys, I'm just going to tell you about when I started to become a chef. So I originally went to college for culinary arts. And I wanted to be a chef. There's a long story behind this, but I wanted to be a chef. I didn't know what that meant really, because you're kind of a dumb kid, but I wanted to be a chef.
Yeah.
And I got through college, went to the Florida Keys. I'm working in the Florida Keys, and I decided, you know, I want to take this even more seriously than I already am. And when I was in the Florida Keys, I was working at 3 different restaurants, 16, 18 hours a day, just making money. And I decided I wanted to do fine dining. So I started doing fine dining, and the first thing I learned was that if I wanted to do fine dining, I had to take a massive pay cut. I had to work off the clock 8 hours a week, and I didn't get days off pretty much. So guess what? This is exactly what I did. And furthermore, and I know most of you out there right now are thinking, I can't do that. I don't have 8 extra hours, this, that, and the other. I understand that. I'm just telling you what I did. On
Yeah.
top of that, if you want to be a chef, you have to learn a lot. So this meant not only was I working 16 hours a day, 8 hours completely off the clock, free labor. When I did have a random day off, I was going to another fine dining restaurant and I was working for free the whole day so I could learn from that restaurant. Now, this is not years ago, guys. This was about 13, no, I'm sorry, 14, 15 years ago, I was doing this. I understand the world has changed in 15 years. That being said, something we've talked about multiple times here is going to come up again. Respect. This got me a lot of respect. This opened a ridiculous amount of doors for me. I was learning more than everyone else. I was advancing faster than everyone else. I took over a restaurant at the age of 22. I could keep going. It's all because of my single-minded focus in working and making myself better. Now, I fully understand that most people do not want to do this. I'm not encouraging people to do this. The reason I'm saying this is because when I deal with anybody under the age of about 40 nowadays, I see exactly zero work ethic at all. I'm talking nothing. Somebody will work 8 hours a day and then tell me how tired they are and how they can't do their workout and how this, that, or the other. This is absolutely absurd. If you're a young guy, my best advice to you is to literally make money and focus on making yourself better in every conceivable way. And I mean that. You should be improving your health, your body. You should be reading books, advancing your mind, your intellect. And all of this stems from one very simple thing, and that is discipline and work ethic. You have to be willing to work. Now, it's a lot easier to do all of this work if you understand how necessary it is. Now, there's nothing I can say to anybody that's going to guarantee that the work you're doing is going to pay off. You could die, work your entire life as hard as you can on your dream and never achieve it. But isn't it much better to work as hard as you can on your dream with the hope of achieving it? At least in my opinion, it is. Now, what's going to separate you is your work ethic. And I think it's luckily in today's day and age, anybody with even a little bit of work ethic or a little bit of discipline or a little bit of focus stands out like crazy because everybody is so pathetic. And I mean that. They're so low standard. I immediately recognize people, even randomly in public, who put more work in. They look different. They have purpose. They're busy. You don't see them at bars socializing and fucking off on their phones. They're working. Now, I know you guys got the phones, you got the TikTok, you got distracted. I know there's lots of new ways to make money which involve all of this technology, and I'm not with all of that. That doesn't change the fact that you got to have more work ethic. You got to be willing to study daily, to read daily, and to put in the work daily. And that's because you're not what you do once a week or once a month. You are the sum of the habits you have on a daily basis, the consistent things that you do on a daily basis, the consistent things that you eat. This is what you become. You are what you digest, the information you digest, and everything else. In the beginning, it sucks and you feel like you're a million miles behind. Later on in life, it gets worse. You get depressed. You wonder, why am I doing this? This isn't accomplishing anything. I'm seeing no results. It gets a million times worse. And you have to keep pushing. And eventually, if you're lucky, something will happen. But you have to have the ability to work and work and work and keep working and understand that things like fun, parties, clubs, women, they're not going anywhere. They're still going to be there. And you need to separate yourself from other people. And you're going to do this with your goals and your dreams and your passions. I mean, it's all of that. I know you had a point in your life where all of that clicked for you. And you were like, yeah, I guess I'm going to have to do this shit, whether I want to or not. You know, I mean, I don't know when mine was, but everybody has those moments where they're just like, yep, I guess I have to.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to do for a lot of people, but delayed gratification is like, like you said, the world has changed, but these principles are the same. So you have to learn to delay gratification. You have to learn to be able to be like, okay, I'm gonna like, say you have a hobby that can be really distracting, like whatever it is, playing video games, right? You, instead of just doing it when you want to, because it's going to like draw you in, you're gonna like waste time doing something that's not really productive, when you could be doing something like, that's like an investment in your future, you you could reward yourself with it. So if I get so much done, then I'll do this thing. Like, like some people might reward themselves with like a treat, like eating something they normally wouldn't, for example, right? I think it's a good start. And after a while, you won't miss those things because then you're going to be really into doing this thing. So delayed gratification is important. It is part of what you were saying with discipline. Um, and also there are ways that to multitask now that did not exist before. For
Oh yeah.
example, I do a lot of show hosting. I do interviews. I also, drive my wife around where, she has a job. And so I have to take her there and we run errands. And I'm doing stuff with the dog and I'm doing stuff at home and I'm working on animation. So what I do is, and I also want to make time for other things like reading books, right? I have a bunch of books in my queue. So what do I do is I listen to audiobooks while I'm doing other things, and I've gotten through, some fictional stuff because I like stories and it's like a big part of what I'm trying to use to change the culture is I think stories are important. And I know that like my political opponents, they know that they've been doing this for a long time. So we have to create like a countercultural thing, and that's been happening. So I want to be a part of that solution. But I also read on philosophy, and like for example, I have this book on ethics by Aristotle that I've been
Mhm.
reading. But I also have Thomas Sowell, which I've been reading, and a book on nihilism, which I think is a very important thing that people should understand.
I
Because
actually, I think most people's conception of nihilism is funny to me. I think nihilism is a good thing. I mean, I guess I'm weird in that regard, but I think it's actually a good thing depending how you look at it.
Well, I mean, I think there's a difference between, I guess, nihilism as a motivation to do something, right?
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
can
yeah,
see
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But I think that in the book of nihilism I was reading is when people think that nothing matters.
Mhm.
And that's when you're in, that's when you're in those pits. And as far as like I think that if a man in particular focuses on those things, and this is like, I've been talking to people that are sort of self-identified incels. I don't know if you know about the incel guys, but
I
they're,
honestly, would you? I mean, I've heard the word incel. It's generally used as a slur. It doesn't
yeah,
it just mean a guy who can't get laid?
yeah, generally, but it's not. That's like I don't. I think it's more than that. But generally, it's a guy who's lonely. That's all it is. Like
Oh,
not
okay.
even a guy who can't get laid, but a guy who doesn't. Most of the time, incels they're not looking for sex because if they were just looking for sex, they could just buy a prostitute.
Oh, I
What
understand.
they're
I got you.
looking for is like a companion. They're looking for
Relationships, yeah.
they're looking for a relationship. They'll say sex. Like I've talked to them. They'll say it, but I'm like, well, why don't you buy a prostitute? And they'll be like, well, it's not the same. Oh, because you don't actually just want to get
You
your dick
know,
wet. You want a partner. You want someone to date. You want to walk on the beach holding hands. You want to do the romantic shit. It's fine, but like let's just first start by identifying what's really missing. And I think that's the case. So, do
no,
you want me to
real
explain?
quick, actually, I kind of wanted to touch on that because we didn't touch on that like I wanted to. It's a good idea. Sex. Sex is not something I think I've really ever talked about more than in passing. But real quick, just for the young guys out there, I know you are hormonal meat monkeys. You're fucking your pillows and you're jerking off 7 times a day and everything else. Okay. I really, really want to stress this. I don't know if I was lucky to have this perspective my whole life, but I'm going to call myself lucky for having this perspective based on my age now and the number of people I've spoken to about sex. I never really had any interest in having lots of sex. And I know how that sounds to guys. They're like, he's full of shit. But I really didn't. Occasionally I'd get, really horny or whatever, and I would like kind of lose my mind because I'd been isolated. So I'd go to a bar and like actually try to pick up a woman. And every single time I ever did that, I called it off halfway through and I went home. And it wasn't because I was afraid to speak to a woman. If not, I talk to girls all the time. I don't care about that. It was because I had no interest in having a one night stand. I had no interest in it. I mean, a couple of times, like I would sit and speak to a woman. What I wanted was a connection. I wanted to have a conversation. I wanted to feel validated that I had a life that somebody else would be interested in. And I wanted to have a conversation with somebody about their points of view and their thoughts. And the reason I'm kind of stressing this is because maybe it's because of how I deal with young guys and coach them and train them and stuff, but they're always talking about, coach, how do I get a girl? How do I do this? My response, generally speaking, is if you keep chasing women, you're going to be very unhappy. If you focus on yourself, making yourself better, and you improve your confidence, not only are women going to naturally come to you, but when it's time to, if you want to, it's going to be a lot easier to approach women. Sex, to me, again, it's a personal opinion. I know it's not popular with most people. Um, it's overrated. I like sex. I'm not like I'm against it. But I don't think anybody should be making it a focus of their day, if that makes sense. You shouldn't be like, I can't wait to go home to put on all this crap and then go hopefully bamboozle a woman into giving me her holes. I mean, I don't know how that makes anybody
Yep.
happy about anything ever. I mean,
Yep.
maybe temporarily in the moment, but again, don't worry about chasing women. Don't listen to other guys talking about how much woman they had and all this and the other and all the notches on their belts. Just like listen to some guy talk about his bench press. Who cares? I don't care. You sound
Yeah.
disgusting. You've had your dick in 40 women. That sounds gross to me. I mean, what do you have? You got STDs now? Like Jesus, man.
Well, that's a real danger, and there's lots more too. I mean, the women that if they thought that this was going to go somewhere and you decided it wasn't, then you can get in some big trouble. I mean, I don't know if you know about Danny Masterson, who he was an actor. He was on that '70s show, and he was just sentenced to like 30 years because there's no evidence for this, but he was accused of raping a woman 20 years ago. And I don't want to get into it, but what I'm saying is
I can't even.
Yeah, it's dangerous. So I agree. This is what I was going to say. So do you want me to tell you what incels are and about the pill colors and stuff?
Oh, yeah,
At least
that's a great.
in terms of
Let's wrap it up with that. Sure, let's wrap up with
yeah.
that.
Okay. So we have the blue pill, the red pill. Well, there's technically the blue pill, the purple pill, the red pill, and the black pill. And there's other
There's a
ones,
white pill
but like in
nowadays.
general, a blue pill is basically a normal person. This is what like the everyday Joe believes about the world, right? The purple pill people are the ones that are kind of like on that journey. They're figuring out like the reality. And the red pill are the people who see that we're living in, and I don't want to like make it too Gnostic, but like essentially the stuff that men are taught early on, and especially with men, I'm specifically referring to it, the reality that we live in is fake. Like this
Yeah.
is not men's nature, it's not women's nature. And all this stuff was put in place way before we were born. So this
Yep.
is not something that happened like in our lifetime. And then you got the black pill, and the black pill is basically nihilism. It's the kind of nihilism that leads to a kind of slow self-destruction, whether it's suicide or it's just like, I'm just going to waste away, which is what most men do when they become too black pilled.
Which pill is it where the guys get all the knowledge about how women and men actually interact and all that other stuff, but
That's
then
the
they
red
hate,
pill.
but then they hate women. After they get the knowledge, they hate women.
There is something called red pill rage. It's a
That one,
phase that
red
when
pill
you first
rage.
learn about this stuff, you get angry.
Me, I
But
had
then
that really bad, by the way. I had that bad for like 2 years.
yeah, I could see that. What I got, I was when I learned about it, I wasn't mad at any person in particular, but I was mad about being lied to for so long. And I think that's a good kind of anger. There's a righteous anger to that
That's
because
I was just
then,
gonna say that's righteous though. That's a righteous
yeah,
anger.
yeah, and
Yeah,
you can be critical after that. Like everything you hear, you should be skeptical of
yeah.
because now it's like, okay, wait, you've lied to me about reality, about the relationship between men and women, like from before I was born. And yeah, I'm not like I think it's important to remember that. I'm not angry about that anymore. I get that it's mostly ignorance now, but the thing with Incels. Incel stands for involuntary celibate, and it was originally something. Well, it still is to a degree something that incels call each other, because I've interviewed some, and
It's
their
not
issue is not
derogatory.
what
It's not like derogatory. I thought it was derogatory
it
slang.
is. Yes. So here's the thing. It is also derogatory, but when incels use it to talk to each other, it's just an acknowledgement of what they believe reality to be. Like this is the state we find ourselves in. Now, of course,
Mm.
they can change that, and a lot of them are trying to. There's a lot of like different things going on there. But when it's derogatory, it's when the let's say the blue pilled world or feminists or academics, intellectuals, like all of these people in the mainstream positions of power, when they talk about incels, they use it in a derogatory way,
Yeah.
and they will use it to insult people. Like, for example, if you get into an argument or a disagreement with someone online, they'll call you an incel. They don't know why they're doing it. They're just responding to programming. It
Mm.
doesn't matter if it applies to you or not, because you'd be like, well, like I've been called incel many times, but I'm married. Like I have a wife. I have no reason for people to want, like, I don't need to change anyone's mind about whether or not I'm successful with women, it's irrelevant because I'm married. Like I'm as far as I'm concerned,
We
it's
already
I
know you're not getting sex. You're married. Yeah.
yeah. No, but I mean, and I think that the thing too is that there's a lot of sleight of hand going on with the language. So I'm going to use the word feminists to describe like people who generally are not red pilled, because most people who aren't are feminists to some degree because they just buy into that general.
Socially, the cultural
Yeah,
bullshit. Yeah.
yeah, they buy into the cultural bullshit. It's like the default religion right now, which is
Oh,
the
that's a good way to put it. That's a good way to put it.
yeah, it is. It is. Actually, it is the default religion that most people follow. So it's worshiping women, which is what they want. So they'll claim that we live in a world that hates women, but what they demand as let's say as service is for people to worship women or always consider a women's perspective, right? So it is a worship of women as victims, and that men always have to serve them. So what does this do? Well, even in the quote unquote red pill part of the internet, what do the PUAs and the dating coaches do? Well, they talk about how successful they are with women. So they're still putting women first. They're just
Mm.
measuring their
Yeah. That's so
their
silly.
humanity by how successful they are with women, right? So it's like you're not escaping any of this shit that you think you're escaping.
I mean, what the hell
Because,
does a dating coach do? Like, go on the fucking date with you and make sure you don't say
well,
something stupid?
no, I think dating coaches
Jesus.
are trying to help men score essentially. But the thing is that men don't need that. I think that what men need first is they need opportunities to earn people's respect in whatever it is they do. Like like again, the blue pill world will say that masculinity is all about dominance and physical, like physicality, like athleticism and like weightlifting and all of that. And yes, that's part of it, but that's not all of it. Like, so what happens is you get like these kind of wimpy guys or nerdy guys or disabled guys, because a lot of the incels are guys with disabilities, they're guys with deformities, they're guys that like are not healthy. They have a problem, some genetic thing. And so what do you expect? Like, before we had the internet, there were always guys like that, and they probably died alone. I mean,
Just
that's
never heard
just
about it. Yeah.
right. Some people just don't like they don't make it. So at least the incels have like a place where they can go and talk to other men. So what I recommend for incels, I have a lot of sympathy for them, but what I say is, okay, first thing you guys have to do is you have to figure out how to build relationships with other men, like friendships. Because if you have bros in your corner, you're going to do a lot better. First of all, you have people to collaborate with. You have
Mhm.
people to work with on stuff. You have people to talk to, because the truth is that blue pill people don't know how to talk to men. They don't understand masculinity. They've lost touch with it completely. I mean, save for some spaces where I guess like you could say men have always been around other men, like if you're working in a blue collar job or something like that. you'll be treated appropriately, even if, you know, you think it may not be like the nicest, but that's what you want. You don't want people to kiss your ass and tell you it's going to be okay. You want people to tell you the truth. That's the best thing that a guy
That's how
can
you
do.
can. I mean, this is how I always tell people. You can tell your friends if your friend is going to tell you the goddamn truth, and it's going to
If
hurt
he's a
your
friend, yeah,
feelings. That's
yeah,
your friend. That's your friend. You know
yeah,
that's the person you want to have around, not the person who says, "Oh, oh, it's okay. No, 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 no. You're right. You're right. You're right." No, I'm going to say, "No, you fucked that up. You fucked up because you did this dumb shit. Now go fucking fix it. You're in the wrong. You're not right. You're in the wrong here. Go
yeah,
fucking fix it." You know.
yep. That's what you need. I mean, you want them to give you credit when you do well. So I think that what men need, and I mean, not just incel men, but I think especially them, but like all men, like men need that. First of all, they want to earn what they get. So they don't want handouts. In general, like, you know, again, this is the blue pill world will say, well, we give women handouts, and to fix the problems with men, we're going to give men handouts too from the government. It doesn't make sense because men
Insulting.
are the ones that pay into the system anyway.
Yeah.
So you're literally saying, well, we'll give you some of your money back.
Here's your
It's stupid.
allowance. Fuck you.
Yeah. So men want to earn their way. They men want to be respected for what they do. You know, like if they're accomplishing something, it doesn't matter if it's physical or athletic, or if they tell really great jokes, or if they're really intelligent. They just want to know that they've earned their way in that regard. And because if you give them a little encouragement, then they'll go much farther. And this is,
Yeah.
by the way, what women do for men.
You know,
But I mean, what they're traditionally supposed to do for men, but they don't, like right now, because we've made our blue pill world have created an environment where women are allowed to be and encouraged to be openly hostile towards men, and so they are. And men are, you know, a lot of them can't cope because they didn't have a father growing up, which is another big legal problem that we talk about on our show. So they're raised around their mom, and in general, in most cases, and I know I'm generalizing, and I'm sure there are exceptions. I'm not saying
always
that
a bell.
there
It's a
isn't,
bell
but
curve. We talk on generals. Talk in general.
yeah, we talk about it. But in general, men who don't know their fathers, or their fathers are not involved in their life, or their fathers are like henpecked and they're not really like allowed to do their job as fathers, they're going to end up seeing their desire to appeal or satisfy their mother will become reflected in the women in their life, and that turns women off. And it also, the absence of father affects women too, because now women, if they don't have a good father in their life, they don't know what a good man looks like, because that's what they're supposed to be
There's
looking for, right?
there's really very few good male role models
Mm-hmm.
anywhere in the media, on
Oh,
TV.
absolutely not.
Literally,
Absolutely not.
name one movie where they don't just make the guy look like a piece of shit the whole movie. You know what I
No,
mean? Even the
those
superheroes, they make the superheroes, they make fun of the male superheroes for being men.
they didn't
It's
always,
crazy.
but they do now. It's the normal now. Yeah. Well, that's the thing is that they throw the men out of the home. The fathers are gone. Then they atomize the family. So now the kids don't have access to their grandparents or uncles. They're having fewer kids, so there's fewer uncles and aunts. And then they demonize the men in their media, like the only place they could go. Even like, you know, not even like real men, like you said, superheroes, cartoons.
Yeah,
There's nothing.
everything.
So
the
so
the, the
boy,
beaten the beaten husband. I mean, I was watching a
yeah,
movie. I was watching a movie last night. The wife cheated on the husband, and she threw him out of the house. And he
yeah,
allowed that to happen. I would have taken all of her shit, put it in her car, lit it on fire, thrown her out, closed the door, and said, "If you come near me again, I'm calling the cops."
yeah. Well, yeah, that was that's what they do. It's on purpose, not an accident. And um again, like, and when boys grow up, they're surrounded by women their whole life. They go to school, most of the teachers are women. Why is that? Because it's not because men don't want to be teachers. It's because they've created a stigma around male teachers. They've created this idea that men are predatory by nature. They're going to prey on the kids. We can't have that. They can't be
Mm-hmm.
coaches. They can't be teachers. They can't be professors. I mean, some of them might be like deans or principals, but in general, like the overwhelming majority of teachers are women. So you have boys growing up and the whole curriculum is oriented towards girls. So boys aren't reading about adventure stories. They're not like, their reading levels are low, their math levels are low because the teaching style that's been put into the mainstream is aimed towards female ways
Yep.
of learning. There's
Yep.
no recess in a lot of cases. Boys get
They get
medicated.
too much energy. They get
You
medic.
put them
Oh,
on
yeah, I
Ritalin.
literally
Put them on
talk about this all the time. Yep,
yeah,
same
yeah.
thing.
So like, you imagine. I mean, it's a miracle that a boy today, a millennial kid or a Zoomer kid, could like be born, grow up, go to school, go to high school, go to university, and not be suicidal when he gets out.
I agree.
After all
No,
of that,
I actually agree. I agree with you completely. I
yeah.
agree.
So
It's one thing I'd like to mention, just because I don't want to use, I'm not using this derogatory, everybody, but we might have incels watching. A couple of things I want to mention real quick, just if you guys are watching. I know that a lot of people see me, and I mean you can't see what I really look like, but I mean, tall, 6'2", covered in tattoos. I have a very athletic bodybuilder body. I'm ripped year round. I'm not tooting my own horn here, guys. I'm making a point. It's very difficult when I go in public. People don't want to interact with me, generally speaking. They're either afraid of me just because of what I look like. And if I approach a woman, generally speaking, her almost immediate reaction, generally speaking, is like, get this fucking guy away from me. He's big and scary. When it comes to me having interpersonal relationships, when it comes to me starting friendships, when it comes to me attempting to get a relationship, dating, any of these things, I want to point out that I get rejected on a daily basis. I mean, if I'm reaching out to help somebody, if I'm reaching out to try to make a friend or whatever, I am constantly rejected. On the very rare occasions where I'm looking to date a woman or for some form of comfort from a woman, etc., I am rejected 99 out of 100 times. I mean, and again, by all standards of definition, I'm fairly attractive. I'm athletic. I have things going on for me, and it doesn't matter. I am still constantly rejected. And the point I'm making with this is all of those rejections, they taught me lots of lessons. They made me a much stronger human being. They made me more resilient. They actually gave me a lot more confidence. But I'm not going to downplay the fact that every one of those rejections hurt me in some way, and they caused me to get upset. And it still happens to this day. I still get upset. I'm not stoic. I'm not impervious to it. I try to be, but it still happens. I still routinely get rejected when I'm trying to get a client or a book deal, or sometimes I'll try to contact a scientist to have my podcast. Some guys I've sent 60 emails to, and they still just reject me. It is what it is. All
yeah.
that rejection is like a superpower. You just slowly eat the rejection over time. You build your willpower, and you just don't forget all the times you've been rejected. Don't forget about it, because you're going to make those people sorry they rejected
you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that what I think is most important right now, I think that like somebody asked me, I have a call-in show over at Badger Live Streams. That's where most of the content I make lives. It's always live if I can do it. And I do a call-in show once a month. You can call in. And one guy called in and said, what are your goal? What's your goal with this? And I said that it's changed. No, like at first it was just get the language out there, and the language has gotten out there. Now I see the kind of like stuff that we talk about is going into the mainstream. Maybe I'm not there talking to Piers Morgan or talking to like, some like on some panel, but it's fine. I don't care as long as it gets out there, and it has. So, some of the stuff that we want is changing. Ultimately, we want to like look at the legal system, but that's like the peak, right? You can't get there if people don't have any compassion for men
you.
to
Legal
start
system
off.
is so screwed though for men.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just
So what I
fucked.
said is what I think is important right now is that men form uh let's say like they need spaces where men can be men together. So like, it used to be the case that men and women would like obviously they would get together, they'd get married, they'd have families, but outside of that, women would have things that they would do with both men and women, and they would have things they would do with women, and men would do the same. They'd have places where they would go with men and women, maybe dinner or a party or some kind of event, barbecue, whatever. And they would have places where they would just be with the guys. And I think that we need that. I think it's absolutely crucial for both sexes. But right now, women have spaces and women have men's spaces and men don't have spaces. Like
Yeah.
they're like anywhere. You know, whenever men do get something to themselves, then women show up, and I'm just gonna say women, not feminists, because most women are feminists to some degree. They're gonna go in there and say, well, you need to make this, welcome to us too.
How come
And
we
if
can't have ladies' night here?
yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta do it. And men used to have lodges. I don't know if you know like about like where they would, maybe they were hunting or they played
Yeah.
golf or they
Upstate
or
New
they were
York.
part of
Upstate
a
New York boy
bowling
here.
league
Upstate New York
or
boy here. We had all the moose lodges and elk lodges and shit.
yeah, all that stuff. And women were like, well, you guys, we don't know, because they didn't know what these guys were doing because they weren't there. They were like, well, we got to break this up. And so, and even in the modern day, right? We don't have like physical places that we can go, but there's men would go to forums. Maybe they would be on, they play games together online or whatever. And then women got involved in that. And whenever they do, you get like this kind of authoritarian thing that comes top down, where these women will either get themselves into positions of power within those groups, like on Twitter, or they will coerce the men that run it to do what they say. And of
Well,
course,
either way, the women being in there is causing friction from other men who are trying to fuck them anyways.
yeah,
I mean, regardless.
yeah. And so then what you got is that like the men are driven out of those spaces. And even now, like the incels, they have a forum, right? And there's this feminist woman named Laura Bates who is pretty, like, I don't know, not popular, but she's very powerful. She has a lot of influence. She's in the UK. She's written a book on this, and her ultimate goal is basically to break it up. Like, this has to go. So what's going to happen? So you have these guys, they're really lonely. They're looking to talk to someone. The only people they have to talk to are other men who are going through the same thing that they're going through. And they're very depressed. A lot of them are suicidal. They're disabled. They're not going to be able to fix their condition. Like, some of them do work on themselves. I've seen it, but like a lot of these guys, they're just, they're kind of hopeless, and they're looking for, well, what's the point in going on, right? They're looking for a purpose. And the one place that they have to go, there's this woman trying to break it up. So does she want them to commit suicide? I think she does. I mean, I honestly think that these people don't care if men take their own life. I mean, this is a thing, like the suicide rate. I saw data on this very recently. Of all the suicide in the United States, of all the suicides that happen, something like white men make up 75% of all the suicides. Just white men, okay, between like sort of like younger to middle-aged guys, okay? And that is 4 times higher than women and 9 times higher than blacks. So this is but white men are the devil, right? They're the most attacked group. So why would men do that? In particular, why white men? But I think that the one thing the data could be a little misleading on is that a lot of times when men are really depressed, they don't necessarily commit suicide. They'll just drink themselves to death, or they'll get addicted to something else, like food or drugs or something. And if they die from that, then it's not considered a suicide, but it kind of is, right? Because there's they're living a life without purpose. So they self-destruct.
This is why, this is actually to just take it back to what we said earlier. I think what I was ranting about earlier, but this is why you guys got to have a purpose. I mean, for a while, my purpose was becoming a chef. Then it was becoming a bodybuilder. Then my purpose shifted and it became, let me teach people biomechanics. This is very important. This is going to change the world. And then my purpose kind of solidified around, I need to teach people about biomechanics and respiratory health and how easy it is to be healthy, how easy it is to be in shape, because no one knows this information. The fitness industry is never going to tell you, because then they lose all of their money. If their gym memberships and their personal trainers, their supplements, their weights, their machines, all goes out the money. So I have to be the one to tell you. Now, I'm very lucky. I have always been able to select a purpose, and this purpose I currently have, as far as I know, it's going to take me till the day I die, and I'm probably not going to be successful. But I'm still going to do everything in my power to be successful. This is a purpose which is so very difficult for me. It's going to take all of my time. It consumes all of my time. All of my time is content, videos, writing my books, writing articles, training people, lecturing, educating, all of my time. And I wouldn't have it any other way. And that's because if I didn't have this purpose, I would be going absolutely insane. The last time I didn't have a purpose, I spent 12 hours a day in the gym and I smoked weed the rest. I mean, it wasn't good. When I have a purpose, I have a reason to wake up, do my reading, my studying, my meditation. When I have a purpose, I have a reason to make sure my workouts are perfect, maximum intensity. I have a reason to make sure I'm perfectly pleasant and paying full attention to every one of my clients. I have reasons for this because I have such a compelling purpose. And the purpose, most importantly, just like you, it's not for me. It's for everyone else, which is why when I don't want to do it, I don't care that I don't want to do it. It's not for me. It's for other people who are relying on me, and I will not let them down.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's why you got to have a purpose. Doesn't matter if your purpose is making enough money. Doesn't matter if your purpose is to be the first member of your family to not be in debt. Doesn't matter if your purpose is to have enough money that you can finally buy yourself robotic legs and stop being handicapped. Who cares? Get a purpose, stick to it, concrete goals daily that you will do, and get on it. Your life's going to get way better. I mean, well, your life actually is probably not going to change in the beginning very much at all, but your mindset's going to be completely different and you'll be much happier for it.
Yeah.
Well, let's start wrapping up. I apologize for stealing the show there, but let's start wrapping up. Yeah, it's a little bit late. So would you mind plugging yourself again just so everybody knows where to find you?
Sure. So my name is Brian Martinez. I do a lot of different things. I'm currently working on a book, and I'm also working on some animation. I will follow up with that maybe at a future date when I'm a little closer towards the end of that project. But in the meantime, I also run 3 YouTube channels. So
Damn,
one is
son.
Badger Live Streams. That's the main one. So look at Badger Live Streams. It is a sort of like a channel connected to the main channel, which is called Honey Badger Radio. Honey Badger Radio is where we put up our sort of like prefab videos that have a little bit more editing and flair to it. And Badger Live Streams is where we do our live shows. I think the live shows are most important because my primary goal is to get people talking about this stuff. And so we encourage dialogue in the comments, in the live chats, etc. So Badger Live Streams. And then for a little fun, maybe like once or twice a week, I have a channel called Honey Badger Arcade, where I do some gaming and I talk about cultural things related to what we discuss on these issues with the audience as well. So sort of like looking at stuff that, where we are now, because I think stories are absolutely crucial. They're very, very important. And yeah, I think that men need stories to resonate with, and they just don't exist in our modern society.
Well, so
So
that's why I enjoyed the fantasy books so much when I was a kid, because all the fantasy books I read was the hero's journey. It was the
yes,
good guy going through a bunch of shit, growing up, becoming a man, solving problems. You
yep,
know?
that's right. And the hero's journey is lost today.
Yeah.
So I would definitely, if you're a gamer, go check out Honey Badger Arcade, or if you're just curious. And also, but the main channel is Badger Live Stream. So go check that out. I actually have a show coming up in about 40 minutes. We're going to be looking at a video from a guy named Sam Cedar, who runs a channel called Majority Report. He's a male feminist guy, and he's talking about these like dating podcast guys called Fresh and Fit, and we're going to be responding to both of those because our perspective, I think, is very different from Sam Cedars, but it's also even different from these like dating podcast guys, because I think, well, I've already said what I thought about, making your whole life about attracting women. I think it's a problem. So
He's stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, I mean, that's
You
what
don't,
a
you
waste
don't
of
have to
life.
do like honestly, it most of the time it'll rectify itself. And I will add one last thing to this too. If you focus on bettering yourself and building friendships, like guys, find a way to hang out with other dudes, like and find stuff that you have in common with them, and don't come across as like obviously desperate or anything, but just go where the men are and hang out with them
And be
and let
honest with the
things
boys.
happen organically, right?
And be
And
honest with the
telling
boys.
you, I'm telling you, like, there's that saying that you always find someone when you're not looking.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it sounds like cliche, but there is some truth to it because when a man is on the hunt, women can tell. But if a man is ambivalent and he's just like, look, I'm just with my boys, I'm just doing this, or he's like, I'm working on some goals or whatever, then the right women will be drawn to you, but also you'll be able to discern them better. Because when you're like going through a dry spell and you're kind of desperate, you might end up like, going with a girl who's bad for you. The thing is that men need to recognize their own value. And this is another thing that we haven't taught them. We teach men that they should be lucky to attract any woman.
No, other
And
way
the truth
around.
is, a lot of
Other way
these women,
around.
they're not worth it. They're not. There's a lot of really trashy
Bunch of basic
like
bitches.
hot pockets out there. And what you need to be able to do is if you want a good woman, if you want a virtuous woman, then you have to know what one looks like. And then you can like discern that. And the truth is you're not going to find them in the club, you're not going to find them in the bar. It's not going to be there. So I just as a final thing, guys, focus on yourself, get your goals together, get your priorities right, and make friends with other men if you haven't, or whatever, and try to bring out the best in other dudes, and they'll help you bring out the best in yourself. And then the women, don't worry about it; they will come, and
It's
by
like,
that time, you'll be ready.
yeah,
So
seriously, best advice I could give you as well is seriously, you people hate hearing this, I know, but who cares about women? Who cares? Completely ignore they don't exist. If a woman comes up to me and it approaches me, I'm like, what the fuck do you want from me?
yeah,
There's no, I don't entertain them because if she wants to speak to me, she fucking wants something from me. And my response to that is get the fuck away from me. You're basically a salesperson at that point, or one of those fucking religious nut jobs that knocks on your fucking door. Get away from me. Get away from me. But
yeah.
anyways, thanks so much for being on here, Brian. I had such a great time. We'll have you back soon, I hope. And everybody go check out his channel if you haven't already. And have a great day. Stay on your grind. Anybody, if you need help, you're an incel, not derogatory, I'm saying that. You need help, you need advice, just send me an email. I'm always happy to answer any questions, give any advice you guys need. But everybody stay hard, stay on your grind. Do not give up hope. Being lonely is not the end. It's usually just the beginning in most cases. You just got to stick to your guns. Find a goal, find a plan, find a passion, go after it. Blinders on to the rest of the world. It's not going anywhere. It's still going to be there when you've got what you wanted. But anyways, later, guys.